Greetings to all my dear students. Let's have a discussion on William Shakespeare's Sonnet 29. Yeah, all of you are familiar with the greatest writer, William Shakespeare. He is often called as England's national poet and the Bard of Avon. He was born in 1564 in Stratford-on-Avon and he died in 1616. At the age of 18, William Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway, and later he shifted to London to begin his apprenticeship as an actor, and later rose to the position of a playwright and producer of plays. As you know, Shakespeare has written more than 30 plays, and traditionally the plays are divided into the genres of tragedy, history, and comedy. Yeah, you have heard about his Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth, which are called as great tragedies. You might have studied some of his plays. More than these plays, he has written verse, including 154 sonnets. What is a sonnet? Yeah, a sonnet is a lyric poem of 14 lines written in a single stanza. Okay, there are two different types of sonnets. The first type is Petrarchan sonnet, and it is named after the 14th century Italian poet Petrarch. The Petrarchan sonnet is divided into 8 lines and 6 lines. Okay, means first 8 lines are called octave, and the second part with 6 lines is called as sextet. Okay, then the second type of sonnet is English sonnet, and Shakespeare followed that particular style. Okay, so English sonnet is also called as Shakespearean sonnet, which has quatrains and a couplet. Yes, there are 14 lines in a Shakespearean sonnet. The first 12 lines are divided into 3 quatrains with 4 lines each. Okay, in the 3 quatrains, the poet establishes a theme or problem and then resolves it in the final 2 lines called the couplet. Okay, most of his sonnets are addressed either to a young man or a dark lady. And his sonnets, though wide-ranging in themes, focus predominantly on love, transience of life and beauty, and the workings of desire. As I told you, these 154 sonnets are conventionally divided between the young man sonnets, okay, from sonnet 1 to sonnet 126, and the dark lady sonnets, sonnets 127 to 152, with the final pairs 153 and 154 sonnets, often seen as an envoy to the collection. And here the young man sonnets, meaning sonnets 1 to 126 are addressed to a young man, a fair youth. And he is addressed as Mr. W.H. And no one knows who this W.H. is. And many historians or many critics have the opinion that this W.H. will surely be a friend of Shakespeare. So they have arrived at a conclusion that Mr. W.H. may be Henry Wriothesley, the 3rd Earl of Southampton, or William Herbert, the 3rd Earl of Pembroke. Okay, both these were Shakespeare's patrons. Okay, then likewise there are some assumptions regarding the dark lady to whom his some set of sonnets are addressed to. Then Shakespeare composed the sonnets during 1592 and 1602 or 1604. Okay, so the opening sonnets. Actually, the opening sonnets means sonnet number 1 to sonnet number 17 urge the young man to marry. Okay, so let's explore the meanings of the sonnet number 29. Yes, this is the poem Sonnet 29. Okay, in this sonnet, the speaker bemoans his status as an outcast and failure, but feels better upon thinking of his beloved. Okay, as you can see, this sonnet has 14 lines in iambic pentameter. Okay, this sonnet is about the power of love to positively affect one's mindset, as the poem argues that love offers compensation for the injuries and setbacks one endures in life. And this poem is also about isolation, envy, and despair. Okay, the first 8 lines list a series of anxieties and injuries, comparing the speaker negatively to more prosperous, successful, and beautiful people, like that. And before moving on to the poem, you should know the background of this sonnet. Okay, so he wrote this sonnet approximately in 1590 or 1592. Okay, maybe in 1593. Okay, so here he feels as socially outcasted. Okay, Shakespeare feels like socially outcasted. Okay, there are 2 reasons for this feeling. First reason is Shakespeare lost his job when the theatres were closed down in 1592 during the outbreak of Great Plague. Okay, it made him feel in disgrace with fortune. The closing of playhouses made it hard for Shakespeare to earn a living. The second reason for this feeling is his fellow playwright Robert Greene verbally attacked him in the same year, in 1592. Robert Greene described Shakespeare as pompous, scheming, and vicious. Okay, so Shakespeare felt himself as not favorable to men. Okay, so in the opening lines of the sonnet, this particular state is reflected. Okay, so let me read the sonnet. Sonnet number 29. When, in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble doth heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one or more, rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy contented least, yet in these thoughts myself almost despising. Happily I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day, arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love, remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. Okay, let's discuss these lines in detail. Let's analyze the first 2 lines. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state. Okay, in disgrace means out of favor. Then beweep means weep over. Okay, so here at the beginning of the sonnet, Shakespeare lists a series of misfortunes he has suffered. He describes himself as disgraced. He says, I am not favored by men and fortune. I weep over my outcast state. Okay, he says that he is hopeless, untalented, and ugly. He lacks political influence. He no longer takes pleasure in the things he once enjoyed. Okay, so he is in an outcast state. Yeah, I told you the reasons. First reason is regarding the closing down of theatres in 1592. The second reason is the verbal attack done by Robert Greene on Shakespeare. Okay, so these events made him feel that he is socially outcasted. Okay, so the speaker feels that he is in disgrace with fortune and men, and he weep over his socially outcasted state. Next lines. And trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate. These lines are making an allusion to Job of the Old Testament in the Bible, who was cast out onto a dung heap. He called for God, but it was in vain. The poet Shakespeare finds himself in the same situation. Okay, here heaven personified as God, and God is deaf here, making the poet's cries useless. Okay, the idea of cursing one's fate also harkens to Job, who cursed himself after falling out of God's favor. Okay, so Shakespeare thinks that God is not listening to his cries. Okay, feels himself as useless and curses his fate. Okay, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate. Okay, he curses on his own fate. He curses himself. Yes, let's continue with the rest of the lines. Wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy contented least, yet in these thoughts myself almost despising. Okay, here Shakespeare finds himself envying others. He feels that everyone has something that he lacks. He wishes to be like one more rich in hope, perhaps hopeful or wealthy. He wants to be handsome like others, which is reflected in the expression featured like him. Then he wants to be possessed with friends, meaning he needs many friends around him. Then, moreover, he envies the artistic talent of one man and the opportunities afforded someone else. Okay, he feels as though he is lacking something that other men have. Okay, he adds in the lines with what I most enjoy contented least, yet in these thoughts myself almost despising. Okay, in these lines, he no longer enjoys that which he used to love the most. Okay, he is in a deep depression. Okay, so these lines reflect his envy on others, and he compares himself with others, and he wants to be like others. Okay, and he no longer can enjoy his life and his belongings or his time with his friends and relatives. Again, he is in a deep depression. Yes, Shakespeare was in a deep depression. And what happened then? Haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. Okay, when he despairs about his own fate and life, he thinks of his friend. Yeah, happily I think on thee. Okay, thee means you. Okay, here it is a fair youth to whom so many of his sonnets are dedicated. Okay, Shakespeare thinks about this person, he becomes happy and his state is improved. Okay, he uses a simile to compare his rising spirits to a lark at break of day rising from sullen earth. Okay, the lark rises from the dark earth in the morning. It implies that the day is much happier than the night. A daybreak is compared to the dawning of a thought of his beloved or his friend. Okay, the speaker, as a lark, leaves behind all his mundane earthly problems and is elevated to a higher plane. Okay, he feels in these happier moments that he is able to sing hymns at heaven's gate directly to God. Okay, so he is moved by the thoughts of his fair youth, by the thoughts of his beloved, that is his friend. For thy sweet love, remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. These are the final couplets of Sonnet 29. The final couplets summarize the previous 12 lines. Okay, the fair youth's love is the only thing that brings the speaker happiness. The love of the friend makes him so happy that all the wealth of a king would not be better. Here, the word state is a pun. Okay, it has multiple meanings. Okay, it carries the meaning of emotional well-being and also refers to a nation or kingdom. Okay, for thy sweet love, remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. Yeah, I'm that much happy now only because of thinking about you and the wealth of kings can't substitute this happiness. Here Shakespeare says. Okay, so he is out from his depressed state only because he started to think about his friend. Okay, that thought saved him or rescued him from his depressed state. Okay, so because of the sweet love of his friend, he regained his happiness and he says, he will lead a happy life or his life will change. Okay, so the sonnet ends with an optimistic note. Okay, so in nutshell, Sonnet 29 shows the poet Shakespeare and his most insecure and troubled situation. It presents explicitly the poet's feeling of the worldly failure and the consolation brought by the thought of the sweet love of his friend. The poet cheers him up by thinking of his sweet love about his friend. Okay, so the sonnet ends with a positive affirmation that the poet can combat his anguish with the sweet love of his dear friend. The memories of the sweet love motivate him to remain hopeful. Okay, so this is the poem Sonnet 29. Okay, hope you enjoyed. Okay, if you are interested in Shakespeare, read the rest of his sonnets. Thank you.